love it. I love it. I'm just getting us warmed up so that it's a beautiful conversation. That's all.
We're going to
Re-
have fun, Jill.
Relaxed. Okay, breathe. Hello and welcome to the Spiritual Revolution podcast. I'm Jill Ogle, and today I have with me Kim Conway, who is an entrepreneur's intuitive insight expert. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much, Jill. I'm really glad to be here with you today.
I'm so happy to be talking with you. Now tell me, whereabouts are you located?
I'm actually in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is right on the
Yeah,
coast in New
beautiful.
England.
Yeah,
hmm
I know that spot.
Yeah.
Great. Well, welcome. So tell me a little bit about what you do. Now, I know that you talk about evidential mediumship and intuition. So tell me a little bit about I mean, first of all, let's talk about intuition. And I know that you've mentioned to me before that you believe that it's a skill and not a gift. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, for me, my belief is that intuition, intuitive, psychic, and even mediumship is just a natural part of ourselves.
Mm,
Um, I don't think it's any more a gift than the body, the mind, the ego, and every other part of ourselves. It's just something that most of us are disconnected from,
yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And so I guess if it is a skill, then it's something that we can develop.
Yes, just like anything else in life, it's something that you can learn and strengthen.
Mm,
And over time, it can just become more and more powerful.
mm,
And everybody's maybe potential might be different based on how much they put into it, or really how much it's supposed to be part of their lives. Just
mm.
like learning an instrument or learning a sport. Some of us are just a little bit more inclined than others.
Yes, no,
Mhm.
I totally hear you on that. I know for me that just over the years, as I've done the work to heal myself, I've naturally become more intuitive and and then every time I sort of recognize it as well, I'm like, thank you, and I just kind of um yeah, I guess I just become conscious of those intuitive nudges and even telepathic messages, and I just sort of start to um, you know, acknowledge that, I guess. And then yeah, I've noticed that it's just become stronger and stronger and stronger for me over the years. So yeah, that's cool. And and so how do you help entrepreneurs?
So I help entrepreneurs really activate and trust their intuition so that they can use it in their business.
Mm,
Because to me, it's just a powerful resource.
mm,
And, over the years, what I really noticed is that it's one of the greatest ways we can help ourselves, help, with decision making,
mm,
confidence, evaluating things, creating, and also, big time billionaires and millionaires really attribute a lot of their success to following their gut and using their intuition.
mm.
And I think we need to take notice of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? Like there's so many decisions to make when you're an entrepreneur. There's so many choices. And I guess so knowing, while I believe that there's no wrong choices because you just get feedback to choose something else,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
obviously if you have that intuition, if you're tapped into that, then there's sort of that ability of like I guess being guided through life, right? A bit more
Mhm.
than getting out of your head and getting into your heart and
Yes.
tapping into that wisdom. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Beautiful.
hmm
Yeah, I've read stories over the years of certain wealthy people that they take, 15 minutes, half an hour every day to sort of lay down and just, let the information sort of come to them. And yeah, so I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that we really don't know but actually are really tapped into their intuition. Yeah. And
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people are tapped in and aren't even really truly aware of it. They're just,
mm,
because it is such a natural process. And it really makes sense to me, Jill, when you said that as you were on your healing
mm,
journey, the more you went inward, the stronger it was getting, because
mm.
that's actually just part of actually connecting to the intuition, you know?
Yeah,
Hmm.
and even more specifically, like as um, I do shadow work. I teach shadow work and help people with shadow work. And so
Hmm.
each time I owned a disowned part of myself, I removed that noise from my subconscious mind, because all of that unhealed, let's call it stuff,
Hmm.
is stuck in your body, is stuck in your subconscious mind. And so every time I healed part of myself and took back part of myself, that information went to the superconscious mind and it just cleared the channel, I believe. Like
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
really, yeah, it really helped me. Um,
Absolutely. There's
yeah.
so much to that. And, sometimes I just think of us as like a big jigsaw puzzle.
Yes.
And some of those pieces are like kind of off to the side, or maybe one piece is in the wrong spot and you got to move them around a little bit. And
Yes.
as we become more aware,
Mm,
connected to our intuition, as we heal the parts,
mm,
acknowledge some of the things about ourselves that we don't want to acknowledge, you just
totally.
see the puzzle just like really taking form in what it's supposed to be.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Yes,
I agree with what you're
absolutely.
saying.
Yeah, and then like I said, that just helps to clear that channel. And so
Yeah.
um I know that you talk about intuition and then you talk about mediumship. So what's the difference between the two? I guess for me, I kind of thought that intuition was like, those intuitive nudges, that intuitive guidance, and mediumship was about talking to dead people, basically. Is that what it is? Or
That's pretty spot on right
oh,
there.
okay.
So, yeah. So I think of, if you think of everything on a spectrum,
Mm,
um, starting with the lowest end of the spectrum, like a gut reaction to something, and moving a little bit further, like your intuition, where you're receiving a little bit of information. It could even just be one word or a feeling that you're interpreting. Now we're moving further into intuitive, where you're intuitively or psychically receiving information.
got
So
it.
the depth of the information is growing as you're
Mm,
going down that spectrum.
mm,
Then you have someone who can actually give an intuitive or psychic reading where it's tons of information coming through. And then all the way to mediumship, where, yes, mediumship is communication with people who have passed and that are in the world of spirit. And for some mediums, it's also communication with animals,
yeah,
pets. And then there's also mediums that are communicating, with angels and things like that. For myself, I'm an evidential medium.
right.
And I don't really communicate with animals,
Okay.
but I might be aware of, someone's here in spirit and they've got a golden retriever with them. Like, so I might
Got
be
it.
aware that someone had a pet, but not actually communicating with the pet. And evidential mediumship really means that I'm talking to that loved one in spirit, getting evidence of them still being around. And what that evidence looks like is their personality, memories of their life, memories, that they had with the person, the sitter or the person that I'm giving the reading to. It can be physical attributes, medical things, items that they had, and really just telling the story that that spirit person wants to tell their loved one, just giving them a voice to be heard, because our loved ones are actually all around all the time.
Mm,
It's not so far away like I used to
mm,
think years ago. And it's just really the purpose of evidential mediumship is to just show that life continues, that there is no death. It's not very message focused.
mm-hmm.
So the message at the end of the reading will really just naturally come from whatever that evidence was, whatever they were talking about.
Got it.
Sometimes they're talking about, things that are going on in your life today that they're noticing, like, seeing that you planted, a tree in your front yard and things like that.
Right.
So, showing things that the medium, like that, I really wouldn't have a way of knowing.
Yeah.
Um, so a medium can do all the things on the spectrum, right?
Yes.
Talk to loved ones in spirit, give a psychic or intuitive reading, has good intuition. A psychic or intuitive is not a medium, but
Got it.
again, like down that spectrum. I do believe personally that we all have the ability to have at least an awareness of a loved
Mm,
one in spirit. Maybe for some people, like igniting that communication might be a little more difficult, or they might be able to ignite it a little bit.
mm,
Um, so, and I think a lot of people will say after someone passed, they kind of felt like they were around them. We've
yeah.
all had our little experiences, um, and and then we just leave it at that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you're actually you're not keeping it vague. You're not saying that, there's someone here who is an older woman. You're actually getting in there and you're giving them evidence to say,
Yeah.
no, like this woman walked with a cane, and this woman,
Yes.
loved to bake, and things like
Mhm.
this, so that they really
Yep.
know that it is that person that you're talking about. It's more
Yes.
defined and refined. Yep, beautiful.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that took time. Like I developed it. I took classes for years and years and years. I think of my mediumship as forever developing and
Yes.
really wanting to get more and more evidence. So, in the beginning, I might have said, I'm here with a grandmother. I know she's on your mother's side and she baked a lot. But now I'm going to want to say, oh, she didn't just bake a lot. There was this specific dessert that she make and like,
Wow. Yeah,
like
got
kind
it.
of like really. So the
Mm,
goal is to get deeper and deeper into that evidence and tell the story of that woman. But
yes.
as people begin, sometimes it's just these little snatchy little things,
Yes.
takes a
Yeah.
while to put it all together.
Yes. No, I love
Yeah.
that. I know, yeah, I know for me, when my dad died nearly 20 years ago, 17, 18 years ago, um we all had an experience. My mom and my brother and my two brothers were there, and so my dad died, and later that night, after they'd taken him away, my dad came to me, and he was a golden glow, and he came and kissed me on the cheek. He went to my brother and said to him, um, look after your mother. And then where my
Mm,
mum was sleeping on the lounge in the lounge room, the TV came on very high volume, like unbelievably high volume, where no one
mhm.
would ever have the TV that
Yeah.
high. This all happened at the same time, and we all rushed into the lounge room because that's where the noises came coming from, and we shared our experiences. Now, my other brother was there at the time too, and he didn't have an experience, and he
Mhm.
was more of a non-believer, whereas the three of us that had this experience, we were all sort of at least on the spectrum of having that belief in psychic ability,
Yeah.
etc. So
Yeah.
how does that play out in terms of people tapping into their intuitive nature? Like, do you think that belief plays a part? Because I can't deny
Absolutely.
what
Yeah.
happened that night, that the
Mhm.
three of us had this amazing experience at the same
Yeah.
time, but my other brother didn't. So
Yeah. So, you bring up like so many beautiful points right now, just in that one story. So thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
So first of all, that's like a common thing that people will talk about someone passing, and then
Mm,
right away, people having a sense of them and
mm,
these things going on. And, maybe a visual, like you said, with the golden glow, and then feeling that kiss. So, like you
mm.
were feeling and seeing,
Yes.
electronics doing strange things, like your TV turning on like that. Um,
Crazy.
and Yes. So these are very common things like
Mm,
spirit people for some reason are able to manipulate electronic things. People will
Mm,
talk about things going on with their phone, their computers. Every time you go on like social media, the same thing keeps popping up on your feed and it seems like a
mm,
sign, all these kinds of things. Or even, manipulating us as people to say something to someone.
mm,
Um, and when someone passes, especially a close relationship like a parent, a husband, um, that that closeness with them might make it feel more comfortable to feel
mm.
them around you or experience them, where it doesn't seem so frightening.
Yes.
Um, and belief does play a role, and it
Yes.
certainly plays a role in our development, like when we're working on these things.
Yes.
All our beliefs, everything we experience has to get filtered through like the cap of beliefs.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
if you think of it like when you were feeling open that way, that you always felt open that way, you feeling your father touch you felt
Mm,
good.
mm,
But imagine if you had the belief that there could be evil spirits and spirits would be out to hurt you.
for
Feeling someone
sure.
touch your face might be jarring and frightening, and you might
Mm,
think something, So like the belief plays a big role in how we interpret the experience, I guess is what I
yes.
would say. And you don't have to be a believer to experience spirit, but it might have made it harder for your one brother
Mm,
to even have an awareness of what was happening or pin it together like this could be dad, that type of thing.
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
for my own self, my mediumship ignited also with a loss. So I was 40. When I look back on my life, I can say, oh, I think that was a mediumship experience, but I
Wow.
didn't like look at it that way.
Right.
But it full on ignited
Mm,
the actual moment my grandmother passed,
mm,
and then kept growing from there.
mm,
And a lot of mediums that I've become friends with, like through all our classes, oftentimes the loss of a loved one kind of just opens up this pathway for ourselves. Or
interesting.
sometimes even a traumatic experience and like surviving that trauma and working through it.
Mm,
Um, and I knew the moment my grandmother passed, even though we were in different states in the US. And my mother and I it was the middle of the night. We were getting ready to go to her because my aunt had called and said, we're in the emergency room and she's going to pass. So
mm,
we were going to drive up there, and it was about a 5 hour drive. And I suddenly just felt like a bang through my body. That's the best way I could
mm.
describe it.
Goosebumps.
And I
Mm,
looked at my mom and I said, Grandma just passed.
mm,
And my mother's a nurse. And we knew like what was going on medically. And my mother said,
yes.
there's no way. That's way too fast. We definitely have time to get there. And I said, we got to call. My mother's sister was there. I said, we got to call Aunt Susan.
Mm,
She just passed. I know it, Mom. I
mm,
didn't know how I knew it. This was all new
mm,
for me. And the interesting thing was I called the emergency room, and my aunt came to the phone, and I didn't say who I was. I just was asking for Susan. And she came to the phone and she said, hello, Kim. Yes, grandma just passed. And I didn't ask her anything. I didn't say
yeah.
it was Kim. And like later on, I thought, why didn't she think it was her sister, my mother, like on the phone,
Yeah.
right? Because I was much younger.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was 40, I wasn't young, but well, that is young to me now. It's
That is
so
young.
nice and
I'm happy with
beautifully
that.
young. But I wasn't a kid, but it was kind of interesting how like this
Mm.
knowing from my aunt to me and my
And
knowing
knowing,
my grandma had passed.
I was going to
Um,
say, and knowing that you were calling for that and not to say, we're on our
we're
way.
leaving now. Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm. Yeah. It,
absolutely.
it was,
Mm,
it's kind of strange, and
mm,
the months that followed, I just one day, I remember it so clearly,
mm,
started, not just having an awareness of my grandmother, but
mm,
having an actual conversation with her.
mm.
Um, and that began my journey. I
Amazing.
didn't recognize it at the time, you know,
Yes.
to me, I love my grandmother. Why can't I talk to her? I believed in life
Absolutely.
after death. It really wasn't something that I questioned that much.
Yes.
Um, so it just felt natural. But as
Mm.
time went on, it started happening with more people in different places and actually even in my work, because at the time I had a psychotherapy practice.
Yes.
And then I was like, something's happening. Maybe I better talk to someone about this. Um, because I really thought I had this whole view of what a medium was. I was
Mm.
like, mediums are just born talking to spirit, right? From the
Yes.
time we're little kids. And
Yeah.
yes, that's a thing too.
Yes.
But what I didn't understand was this can ignite in your life at any time.
Mm.
Anytime. You could be
Absolutely.
80 and
Yes.
start.
Yes.
Um,
And
and that so it took
yeah.
me a while to kind of like know this is what's
Mm.
happening with me.
I want
Yeah.
to ask you, you mentioned about when your grandma passed, you just knew, you felt it in your body. And this is
Mhm.
something that I say to my friends that are completely unaware of their intuition, is to say, it's a knowingness in my body. When I
Mhm.
when I know something, it's a knowingness in my body.
Yeah.
Is that something that's kind of, that's it, throughout all of the readings that you do, throughout the teaching that you do, throughout your own experiences? Is that what it is for you? Is it a feeling in your body, like it's a knowingness?
Um, that particular moment with my grandmother, I would say it was a knowing, like a thought and a feeling at the same time, but it
Yes.
probably seconds apart started with my body, the
Yes.
feeling.
Yes.
But when we're communicating, whether it's our intuition,
Mm,
all the way up that spectrum to mediumship, we're
mm,
using what I like to call as like our soul senses. So just like we
mm,
have senses in the body, we have these other senses.
mm.
Um, and we're using those senses to get the information. So
Yes.
when you say you feel it in your body and a knowing, you're
Mm,
probably having a thought and a feeling.
mm,
And maybe for you, like split seconds before, it's a feeling. And it
mm.
can be a physical feeling in the body, it can be an
Yes.
emotional feeling,
Yes.
but it's a way to give us information. And in
Yes.
a mediumship reading, the feeling part, I
Mm,
keep that running the whole time.
mm.
I think for myself, that was probably the strongest sense for me in those beginning years, I would say.
Yes. Yep.
Even though I was using other senses as well.
Mm,
Um, and that's just a strong one for me. And it is amazing the depth of information you can get just from feeling. You
mm.
know, if you even think of just our emotions in general or physical feelings,
Absolutely.
how much description you can use to describe one thing, right?
Yes.
So in a mediumship reading with the feeling, you might get a sense, I might be able to describe someone's personality through
Yes.
that sense. I may be able to describe how they died, like what happened to their body, or
Right.
if they had
Okay.
an illness, or maybe, they walked with a limp or something like that.
Yes.
Through feeling. Through feeling, I'll know, like the first thing I'll always know with connecting to a man or a woman. So like through feeling, usually it's
Got it.
that. So much information,
Yes.
you
And,
know?
and so for people that are listening, how important is it to allow your emotions? I mean, for me, I feel like our emotions are such an intelligent feedback mechanism to show us,
Yeah.
where we are in life, and, what needs to be healed, and when we're out of alignment. But I feel like so many people outside of the spiritual revolution, are taught to sort of, not feel, like it's not okay to feel. How
Mhm.
important are emotions in learning how to be more intuitive in this process of moving towards mediumship?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can be intuitive and never connect to feeling and never use that sense. But you're going to, if you don't use that sense, you're blocking a lot of information that could be coming through, right?
Yeah.
So it is quite important.
Mm,
But as you're developing your intuition, guess what? All these other parts of yourselves are going to start showing up. So if you're someone that emotion has been hard, maybe you've been taught by
Mm,
your family or your culture,
mm,
don't show your emotions. Nobody
yeah.
wants to know how you're feeling, right? So
Yeah.
that might be a really hard one. When I worked with teaching mediumship and intuitive, I remember one student in general, in particular, I mean, we were talking about like one of the common messages in a mediumship reading is they're sending you their love, right? It's just like a
Mm,
common, it's like a
yes.
nice way to end the reading, right? I
Yes.
leave you with their love. And she couldn't really say that.
Mm,
And I said, so what's happening when the spirit person is actually like wanting you to say that? So we started talking about it, and turns out she's never even personally said the words, I love you.
wow.
Been taught not to say that. Even as a mom, she's never said it. She's just
Mm,
never said it. So working through that discomfort of
mm,
expressing love was a
mm,
big part of her development to be able to do that in her readings.
mm,
So, you know, all different things show up when you're
mm.
developing your intuition, right? Your confidence,
Yes.
fears,
Yes.
self-doubt. Do you
Mm,
trust yourself? If you
yeah.
trust yourself, how are you going to trust your intuition, right? So you have to kind of
Absolutely.
work on it.
Mm,
And both help each other.
mm,
Makes sense. Like if you start
mm.
developing your intuitive abilities, you're going to help these other things. But
Yes.
also to develop your intuitive abilities, you got to work on these other things. And I do think pairing them together
Mm,
is super powerful.
amazing.
Powerful. Yeah.
Amazing. Um, do you have a story of, someone who maybe came to a reading or that you had a reading with, someone that you'd like to share, what
Of a,
happened and
yeah, like of a mediumship reading.
yeah. I'd love to, I would love to know, what goes on.
Yeah. So I can give you bits and pieces of
Yes.
stories. And what
Mm,
I mean by that is not even like for confidentiality reasons.
mm.
There's something about giving a mediumship reading where there's a little bit of an amnesia afterwards.
Right.
And
Okay.
most
Yeah.
mediums will describe that and say, like, if I give you a reading and we talk about it right away, it's kind of
Yes.
like you wake up and you know your dream, but it's like falling
Got
away from you
it.
so fast. But if
Yes.
someone could say, you dreamt about this, it
Mm,
would kind of stir it up and bring it back to light. Does that
got
make
it.
sense?
Yeah. It's like you're a
So I
channel rather
remember
than,
bits and pieces, and
yes.
some readings I remember better than others.
Mm.
And okay, so this is just my own theory, not
Yeah.
really based on science, but there are some scientists studying the brain
Mm,
when someone's doing either a psychic or mediumship reading.
mm.
And what they're finding is we're using our brains very different in those moments. So
Right.
the frontal lobe actually is completely inactive.
Right.
That
Okay.
sounds crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're conscious, but there's no frontal lobe activity. Um,
Interesting.
so I have a feeling it's because of
Mm,
like the way we're using our brains in those moments,
mm,
it must affect memory.
mm.
That's the only thing I can say.
Yeah.
It,
It's like you're
um,
kind of stepping out of the way and channeling that information, and then you're coming back in, and it's like, well, I've no idea
yeah,
what just happened, but
yeah. It's not so much that I'm gone. I'm very there,
yes.
but my
Okay.
ego mind
Yes.
has to sit back and watch the show.
Yes.
A lot of intuitive development and
Mm,
even developing your intuition
mm,
is the training of the mind.
mm.
Because the mind wants to interfere. I mean, that's
Yeah.
actually its job. We're awake. It's supposed to be running and doing and do that. This is its
Absolutely.
time, right?
Yeah.
So we're asking it to sit back and
Yes.
allow the soul senses to do their work and allow the soul to do the work.
I love it.
Um, so there are times in every reading the mind is going to come in, but
Yes.
part of the development is like having an awareness. Oh, wait a minute, that was my mind. Let me get back to your grandmother, that type of thing.
Got it.
And that just takes a lot of development and practice. But
Yes.
I'll bet even when people are using their intuition, I mean, the number one thing people will say to me is, I can't tell if it was my mind or my gut. How do I
Mm,
know?
mm,
Just that discernment between the
mm,
two takes
mm.
some training and learning.
Yes.
Um,
And you teach all of
so
this in your programs, right? Like this is
yes,
it, right?
this is
You
a big part of what I teach
mm,
and what I had to learn to do myself.
yes.
But back to your question,
Yes.
maybe I can think of like some interesting like evidence. Like as mediums, we kind of judge our evidence. We'll be like, oh, that wasn't such good evidence, or that's great evidence, because we
Mm,
have an awareness of like what's harder for us, you
mm.
know? So personally for myself, I'm not really good at getting names in a
Okay.
mediumship meeting. Some
Yeah.
mediums are just like rapid fire with the names. Like I
Yes.
have John right here.
Got it.
Who's connected to John? That type of thing.
Yeah.
That always amazes me because I'm not actually good at that. Well,
Yes.
guess what? I'm not good at remembering names in real life either.
Yes, right.
Right? And I haven't like really worked at flexing that muscle.
Yeah.
So like if I get a name, I'm really super excited because I know for me that was hard. The sitter
Yes.
might be a big deal. They don't know that for me that was hard.
Yeah.
Um, but an interesting reading I had this past year, the reading started out, and I'm always aware if I have a man or a woman. This is the first way I start. And
Mm,
even a sense of age, maybe not the exact age, but I know someone's in their early 20s, that type of thing.
got it.
And this particular reading just started with music. I was hearing bagpipes being played. And
Mm,
that was kind of fun for me because my hearing sense is not as strong as my other senses. So I was like
right.
kind of excited. And it started out, it was this funeral of this older gentleman. And he was showing me that there were bagpipes playing at
Right.
his funeral. And the sitter said, well, I don't know about that. I was there. I don't remember any bagpipes. She said, but I'm going to find out. Well, anyway, after the reading, she got back to me, and sure enough, there were bagpipes played at the funeral.
Wow.
And to me, if a sitter says no to evidence and
Mm,
then later finds out it was
mm,
correct, I think that's so much more powerful, because um, they it just opens up for them this
mm.
idea, oh, maybe they really are still around,
Yes.
maybe there is still some life after death.
Yeah.
So that's one that just like came to my mind just
I love
now.
that. Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
and I think I've had readings in the past, not mediumship readings, but psychic readings.
yeah,
And, someone has said something and I'm like, I don't know about that. And it sort of closed me off during the reading
mhm,
because I'm like, I don't, but then,
yeah,
later found out that it was actually true. And it's
yes,
like, well, so going into these readings, I guess, understanding that, you might get some information that doesn't necessarily make sense to you at the time, but to try and
yeah,
stay open because, um, you know, after the reading, like you can go and you can confirm things
yeah.
and
You
whatever.
might
But
find out later on someone's going to verify that evidence.
yes,
And part of what I had to do was be able to keep reading after getting no's because it's hard.
yes,
No just pulls the mind right in. You're like,
I
oh
can
no, I'm getting it
imagine.
wrong, right? But part of my development was not to even be concerned about those no's.
Mm,
I'm expecting a couple of no's
mm,
because we can't remember everything.
absolutely.
And we remember later on, or
Yes,
someone else can corroborate that evidence.
yes,
Um, in the world of spirit, our memories are crystal clear in a way
yes.
that our memories are not here.
Mm,
Um, so I think a good rule of thumb for someone who's getting a mediumship reading
mm,
is about 80 to 90% of what's brought through, you should be able to say yes to.
got it.
If you're saying no to 10 to 20%, that's a decent mediumship reading.
Yes.
That's to be expected.
Mm,
And I've had a lot of my mentors and teachers say, you don't want to give a mediumship reading where it's 100% yes, because you might be actually reading them psychically and you want to be
right.
talking to the world of spirit.
Right.
And But of course, it always feels good to get the yes, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Um, yeah. So, um, you also bring up the point of like you said, like stay open in the reading
Mm,
as the person receiving the reading.
yeah.
And, a lot of times mediums will be like, oh, I couldn't meet that person. They were hard to read or they were so
Mm,
closed off. And there's definitely some truth to that.
mm,
But all that is really happening is our minds are coming in stronger because somehow we've picked up psychically,
got
they're
it.
not so into this or they don't
Yeah.
believe in this. And the mind just interferes. I really take full responsibility for my readings.
Mm,
Um, it's not my sitter's fault if they got a crappy reading.
of
It's
course.
my mind got in the way.
Got it.
Um,
Yeah.
Also, depending, like everyone comes to a mediumship reading wanting to hear from certain people. We all have
Yes.
our A-list team in the world of spirit, right? Then you have like your B-list, and then you have people you wouldn't even think would have anything to say to you, right? Or like people you actually do not want to hear from,
Right.
right?
But they've still
So
got
I'm
one last
very
thing to tell
aware.
you.
Yeah, like I'm very aware when someone comes to a reading, there's someone they really want me to
Of
connect,
course.
right?
Yes.
But I can't guarantee that
Mm,
because it's like, who am I aware of?
mm,
So if a medium says to you, oh, I'm sorry, your mom's not here, don't go back to that medium because
yes.
that your mom is there.
Yes.
It's on me who I connect to. And I do
Yes.
explain all that in the beginning.
Yes.
That everyone you want to hear from today is here. They're
Yes.
trying to talk to me. It's
Yes.
really on me who I become aware of,
Yes.
but I want you to know they're all here.
Yes.
Um, so and that's just how it is. And
Yeah.
as a medium, you want to serve that person in front of you and connect to the one that they really want to hear
Absolutely.
from. But
Mm,
I also trust the world of spirit, and sometimes there's certain things that might need to be said
mm,
that someone else in the spirit world is going to do a better job with.
mm.
But also,
Yes.
not to make it too complicated, Jill, just like we're learning how to use all those soul senses to communicate,
Mm,
when we go to the spirit world, we have to learn how to do that too.
right. Yeah.
Well, some people are good, like my grandmother and your father, like right away, people
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
aware, they could do it. And
Yes.
other people, it's just going to take some time, right?
Yes.
So maybe someone in the world of spirit that you want to hear from is really great at communicating like through taste or
Mm,
hearing sounds.
mm.
And I'm really great at my knowing, my feeling, and my
Yes.
seeing. So we're kind of communicating a little bit differently. So again, that might be why I'm having a hard time becoming aware of them.
Got it. Yeah.
It's learning on both sides.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah,
you made a great point that that person's always there, like that energy is always there because nothing's created or destroyed, right? It's just changing form. And so
it's just
um
changing.
yeah,
Yeah.
everyone, that energy still exists for
Mhm.
anyone that's listening
All
that
those
think that
memories. And
yeah.
we talked about emotions. Like that's another thing
Mm,
that still exists is the emotions.
mm.
It's just the ego mind and the body that
I'm
are gone.
yeah, I'm curious in regards to reincarnation, like how do you think that that actually impacts that spirit's ability to come through in a reading? Like, could that have something to do with it? The fact that you know the mum that isn't showing up, well, they've actually reincarnated. What do you think? Do you have a
Yeah.
theory on that?
It's such a complex question
Yeah,
and
for
rooted in
sure.
so many different beliefs. And my beliefs about it keep changing. So
Yeah,
I'm just going to share my beliefs about it
for
because
sure.
none of us really knows, right?
No,
Anyway.
and that's the
But
thing, I just
yeah,
love
it's
to
just like
ponder
a
these.
curiosity,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
first of all, I mean, I do think reincarnation does exist, even though I
yes.
keep saying, please, can this be my last time? But I think it's not a quick turnaround.
Mm,
I think there's so much planning involved in planning like what our journey is going to be in this human form,
mm,
what family we're going to be attached to, who we're going to, what we're going to do like that, all that planning. So I have
mm,
my feeling is that takes a very long time to do.
Mm,
Plus all the healing that's going to occur and learning and growing after we pass
mm,
to get ready for the next. And then I also think of the soul, where like each of our personalities is part of that soul.
mm,
Like maybe there's just many different personalities there or
mm,
people, so to speak,
mm.
so that maybe I'm going to go the world of spirit and the memory of Kim and the energy of Kim is still going to be there in the world of spirit, but
Yeah.
some other facet of my soul is going to go have a life somewhere else and simultaneously. So sometimes that blows my
Yeah.
mind when I think about that, but so
Well, that,
that I can start keep talking to people's like great grandparents, right? They
yeah.
come through readings and they're still communicating with us.
Mm,
Um, but
yeah.
I don't really know.
Yeah.
And I just keep sort of changing my mind about it, you
Yeah. And I
know?
guess,
But
if you
it is
believe,
possible that someone's out having another experience and that's why you're not hearing from them.
yeah.
But still, their soul is still in the world of spirit. So,
It is. And I guess,
yeah,
if you believe the concept of no space, no time beyond this realm, well, you know, each of our lives are happening simultaneously anyway.
simultaneously.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, you know, I believe that they've already incarnated, like they're in another incarnation anyway. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's something to think about anyway. I just want to ask you a couple of things before we go. First, I'd love to know, the theme of the podcast is spiritual revolution. So what does that mean to you, if anything?
First of all, I love that title.
Thank
I
you.
really, really love it.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, like
Mm,
my passion to like just give out
mm,
to the world,
mm.
people, humanity at large, is that there exists in each person this powerful place,
Yes.
your intuitive space.
Yes.
And what I've seen through my intuitive coaching and giving readings is it's so helpful.
Mm,
It's such um, a, a powerful source of support and
mm,
wisdom.
mm,
And that the more people that spend some time learning how to connect to their intuition or
mm,
their intuitive abilities, I think the capacity to help humanity at large
mm.
is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Because that source of information is just a powerful, non judgmental, creative, healing love.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've noticed, like just not just myself, but every medium that I know,
Mm,
after doing a reading, like we are so uplifted.
mm.
My girlfriend calls it the afterglow. And it
I
like
love
lasts
it.
sometimes for 24 hours. Or, like you're
Yes.
so happy. You look at the world like this beautiful, beautiful, you
Mm,
can just see all the beauty.
mm,
Um, and that's the capacity
mm.
of what's inside of us and how we can start looking at one another
Yes.
and looking at our differences
Yes.
and just embracing that
Mm,
and embracing compassion. I mean, I just think the capacity is huge.
yeah. I love
And
it.
there's no evil there, there's no unkindness there.
Mm,
That only is created from the ego mind. That's my personal belief.
mm.
Um, so when I think of a revolution, it would be one by one, people finding this part of themselves.
Love it.
Because once you find it, Jill, like you still can get mad.
Of
You
course.
still can
Of
like hear
course.
someone do something and be like, right? You can still judge,
Of course.
but
We
you
live in
have
duality.
this
Mm,
capacity to shift right away from that. You
mm.
just don't want to do it so much anymore,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, I want to be kinder. I just want
Yes.
to do that.
Yeah.
And I think it could change everything.
Beautiful. I love that. So, if people want to reach out to you, Kim, and I know you've got some programs coming up, you've got you actually teach people how to get in touch with this as well as doing readings. Where can they find you?
I think the greatest way, like social media is just my Facebook profile, Kim Conway. So
Perfect.
easy enough. And anyone that's has questions about their intuition
Mm,
or is trying to figure something out, I do offer free calls. They're my intuitive solutions calls. You can just hop on a free call with me.
great.
I can give you that link, Jill.
Yes, I'll pop
Um,
the links below.
yeah, and then that's just a great way to get in touch with me. But my messenger's always open. You can reach out to me on Messenger and chat and ask me your questions. And I just know that you have it too.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks for being on the show. And I really appreciate your time. And I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Jill.